Step aside, ma'am. This flight is for real soldiers, not relics from the past. That's what they spat at Bella Carrington, loud enough for everyone to hear as she stood quietly with her deployment orders. They called her dead weight, accused her of faking. Snickered when she removed her coat, revealing the scar of a bullet that nearly killed her. But just as they prepared to escort her away, a general stepped off a landing helicopter. He froze, his eyes locked on her scar, and he saluted, shocking the entire airfield into silence. What happened next exposed decades of forgotten sacrifice and one soldier's long-awaited recognition. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel for stories that remind us real honor doesn't fade with age. The wind cut through the open tarmac like a blade, cold and sharp despite the early summer sun hanging over Ramstein Air Base. Rows of grey hangars gleamed in the light, military personnel moved with purpose, and the low rumble of engines in the distance formed a steady background hum. Among the sea of crisp fatigues and buzzing radios stood a woman who did not belong, at least not in their eyes. Bella Carrington adjusted the strap of her duffel bag and stepped forward in line, holding tightly to a folded set of deployment orders. Her boots were worn, her stance steady, and her eyes calm, but too many people around her saw none of that. They only saw what they chose to see, a woman in her late 40s, black alone, and dressed in a plain tan jacket that bore no visible insignia. "You lost, ma'am?" the private behind her said with a smirk. She turned to face him. He was barely out of boot camp, baby-faced, pale, and cocky. His name tag read Maddox. The two other soldiers beside him chuckled under their breath. One of them, a lean Hispanic kid named Alvarez, whispered just loud enough, "She looks like she wandered off from a nursing home." The third one, Fields, chimed in, "Maybe she thinks this is the line for senior discounts." Bella said nothing. Her grip on the paperwork didn't tighten, her eyes didn't flinch. She simply faced forward again and moved one step closer to the security checkpoint. That was when Lieutenant Riley Monroe spotted her. Monroe, tall and sharp-edged, with a blonde bun tucked so tightly it seemed to pull at her forehead, walked briskly up to the line. She scanned each person with the precision of someone who thrived on control. Her eyes stopped on Bella, narrowed. "Excuse me," Monroe said, stepping in front of Bella. "This flight is for active duty personnel only." Bella offered her the orders. "I have official transfer papers. Voluntary reactivation approved." Monroe took them, skimmed the top sheet, and without a word handed them off to the corporal beside her. "Check this thoroughly." Then, loud enough for the line to hear, Monroe added, "We've had cases of stolen IDs before, people pretending to be soldiers to sneak onto base transport." The three privates behind Bella burst into louder laughter. "What's next? Someone's grandma shows up in fatigues. She's gonna teach hand-to-hand knitting. Bet she's here to cook, not fight." Bella closed her eyes for just a second, not long enough to give them satisfaction, just long enough to remember the choking sand in Fallujah, the ringing in her ears after a mortar strike, the smell of cordite and copper. She remembered blood, hers and others, and she remembered staying behind even after being hit to cover the retreat of 56 men. She opened her eyes. "Remove your jacket," Monroe instructed. Bella hesitated, then unzipped the tan outerwear and slid it off. The wind struck her bare arms through the sleeveless olive shirt beneath. And just as she knew it would, the scar peeked out from under her left shoulder blade, long, thick, and jagged, tracing the curve of her back like a burn that never fully faded. Everything went quiet. Fields whispered, "Damn, that looks real." Maddox squinted. "Could be fake, special effects." Monroe, arms crossed, leaned closer. Her voice lowered. "You don't look like someone who belongs in uniform. Not anymore. You want a seat on that flight? Convince me you're worth the fuel." Bella looked her straight in the eye. "I'm not here to convince anyone. I've already served. I'm just here to serve again." Before Monroe could respond, the sound of rotor blades thundered overhead. A Black Hawk helicopter descended rapidly, wind kicking up dust and flapping at uniforms. Monroe turned to see what was happening. So did the rest of the line. The chopper landed with military precision, and from its door emerged a tall, broad-shouldered figure in decorated fatigues. General Clayton Rhodes. He stepped onto the tarmac, surrounded by aides, moving swiftly toward the terminal. Then he saw her. His eyes fixed on the woman standing at the checkpoint, coat in her hand, scar exposed, facing down a wall of suspicion. He stopped walking. Everyone stopped. Rhodes broke from his group and walked straight to Bella. The soldiers, the officers, even Monroe parted silently. He stood before her, eyes locked on the scar, then on her face, and he saluted. "Ma'am," he said, voice firm but reverent, "you opened the corridor in Fallujah. You stayed behind. I've never forgotten that." Bella's mouth twitched at the corner. "Sir, didn't expect anyone to remember. I never got the chance to thank you." Monroe's face had gone pale. Rhodes turned to her. "Is there a reason this woman isn't already on that flight?" Monroe stammered. "There was an issue with verifying her papers. We were just... Her scar verifies more than your clipboard ever will." He faced Bella again. "Come with me." And with that, General Rhodes escorted Bella past the line, past the stunned stairs, and onto the tarmac toward the transport jet. Behind them, no one laughed. The wind kept blowing. But now it carried only silence. Bella walked in silence beside General Rhodes, the weight of 100 stairs pressing against her back as they crossed the tarmac. The roar of the Black Hawk's blades faded behind them, replaced by the low murmur of disbelief. She could feel eyes clinging to the scar on her shoulder, not out of curiosity anymore, but out of guilt. Rhodes didn't speak until they reached the terminal entrance. He paused at the glass door and turned to her. "You handled that with more grace than most people I know, Bella." She looked at him. "After what I've seen, a few jokes don't sting the same." He gave a small nod. "Still, they'll remember today. That's something." Inside the terminal, a wave of movement resumed. Aides resumed talking into radios. Personnel continued their checklists, but there was a new undercurrent, a shift in tone. As Rhodes passed through, officers straightened their posture. A few nodded to Bella, some unsure, some respectful, others clearly ashamed. In a private holding area near the flight deck, Rhodes gestured for her to sit. "I'll have my aide expedite your clearance. You'll be on that jet within the hour." "I appreciate that, sir." He hesitated. "Do you want to make a statement about what happened? What did they say to you?" Bella shook her head. "No, let them remember their own words. That'll last longer than paperwork." Rhodes exhaled slowly, clearly not used to hearing that kind of answer. "You know, I wasn't supposed to be on that flight. The weather shifted. Otherwise, I never would have seen you. Maybe someone up there decided I'd had enough for one morning." He cracked a smile. "Or maybe someone decided it was time they all remembered who the hell you are." As the general stepped out to make calls, Bella sat alone in the quiet room. The hum of HVAC units and far-off jet engines filled the space. She leaned back, exhaling, letting the tension finally slide off her shoulders. Her hand brushed the scar out of habit, fingers tracing the ridges of memory. She thought of the 1 Stone Recon Battalion, thought of Baker, Simmons, Lieutenant Rourke. The last time she saw them, they were bloodied and scrambling out of a kill zone while she stayed behind with a sniper rifle, bleeding out but unwilling to abandon her post. A knock at the glass door. She turned. It was the corporal who had taken her papers. Nervous, mid-20s, freckles. He opened the door slowly. "Ma'am, your paperwork's been cleared. Flight team is prepping to board. Thank you." He stepped inside, hesitating. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for not saying something sooner. Those guys, Maddox, Alvarez, Fields, they're idiots, but I should have stopped them." Bella met his eyes. "The fact that you're saying it now matters more than if you'd said it when they were laughing." He looked relieved, but still embarrassed. "Have a safe flight, ma'am." When Bella stepped back into the main terminal, something subtle had shifted. No one laughed. Some looked away. Others nodded. One officer murmured, "Respect, ma'am," as she passed. But not everyone was silent. In a corner, Maddox stood leaning against the wall, arms folded, staring at the floor. Fields was beside him, chewing his fingernail, clearly uneasy. Alvarez wasn't in sight. As Bella walked by, Maddox mumbled without looking up, "Didn't know, that's all." Bella stopped. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't scowl. She simply said, "Then maybe next time you'll think before speaking to anyone like that." She didn't wait for a reply, and none came. Out on the tarmac, the C-17 transport jet stood like a steel colossus under the noon sun, rear ramp down, crew members moving supplies aboard. Bella climbed the steps with the same calm she always carried. Inside, the cargo hold was lined with rows of seats half filled with troops. Most of them turned to look. A few smiled. A young female Marine gave her a seat and a respectful nod. "Ma'am?" Bella returned the nod. She sat, stowed her bag, and exhaled. The engines roared to life minutes later, the aircraft vibrating with rising power. Through the small round window, Bella saw the edge of the base slipping past. The runways, the hangars, and the people she was glad to leave behind. But not Rhodes. He stood beside the runway, hand raised in a final salute. Bella didn't wave back. She just closed her eyes. And finally, after everything, the insult, the doubt, the humiliation, she felt weightless again. Not because the jet took off, but because, for once, someone remembered her name and what she gave. The C-17 cut through the sky like a silent giant, its belly full of men and women, each cloaked in thoughts too heavy to speak aloud. Somewhere over the Mediterranean now, altitude steady, turbulence light, Bella sat motionless by the window. She hadn't moved in for over an hour. The young Marine beside her had tried once or twice to strike up conversation, but eventually gave up. There was something about Bella's presence, unflinching, composed, deeply still, that demanded space more than words. Inside the jet, the usual buzz of chatter had died down. Soldiers rested with their heads back, earbuds in, or scrolled through phones if they had downloaded anything to watch offline. The constant vibration of the aircraft was almost soothing. Almost. Bella finally blinked. Her reflection in the small porthole stared back at her. She hated flying, even after all these years, not out of fear. She'd faced mortar fire and lived, but because it gave her too much time to remember. Fallujah. The alley, the signal flare, the blood, Rourke's voice screaming through the radio, "We're not leaving you!" But they had to, she'd ordered them to. A cough snapped her back. A soldier in the aisle across was looking at her. Male, mid-20s, uniform crisp. He cleared his throat. "Ma'am?" She turned her head slowly. "I just wanted to say, that was you back at the terminal, right, with General Rhodes?" A few others looked up now, curious. Bella gave a small nod. "It was. That was badass. I mean, sorry, I didn't know about Fallujah." One of the crew showed us the photo that's already circulating. You standing there, coat off, scar showing, General saluting you like that. It's been sent around, ma'am. Everyone's seen it. Bella stayed quiet. "Is it true that you stayed behind alone to cover their retreat?" Another soldier leaned in, intrigued. Bella looked around at them. Their faces were young, their eyes were untested. They had no idea what war really looked like. But they were willing to listen. So she spoke. 20 years ago, she said, voice even, I was stationed with 1 Stone Recon. We were in Fallujah during the heavy push, got caught in a crossfire pulling out of a collapsed building. Ambush hit from both sides. They leaned in closer. We couldn't call for air support fast enough, so I climbed a damaged stairwell with a broken leg and set up a sniper nest. I stayed there while my unit pulled back. I took out as many as I could until I ran out of bullets. Someone whispered, "Jesus." Bella continued, "They got out. I passed out, woke up in a medical tent in Ramadi. Doctors said I should have died. Maybe I did, but something brought me back." A silence fell over the nearby rows. Then a female soldier in the back, dark braids under her cap, spoke up. "Why'd you come back, ma'am? After all that?" Bella met her gaze. "Because too many of you are heading into things you don't understand yet, and someone needs to prepare you better than I was." The girl nodded slowly. For the next hour, the mood in the aircraft changed. A few soldiers came to sit closer. They asked questions, not just about war, but about fear, leadership, regret. Bella answered what she could, stayed silent when she couldn't. She didn't glorify anything. She told the truth, and that, more than any medal, earned their respect. When the aircraft finally began its descent over Jordan, the crew called out for gear checks. Helmets clicked into place. Straps were tightened. But as Bella stood to grab her bag, a voice came through the comm system. "Before we disembark, I have a message from CENTCOM to Sergeant First Class Bella Carrington. Welcome back to active duty. Your presence is not only approved, it is requested." A few claps broke out, then more and more. Soon the entire rear of the plane thundered with applause. Bella didn't smile, but her eyes gleamed as she stared ahead. And this time, when the ramp lowered, she walked down it not as a forgotten veteran, but as someone they looked up to. The sun over Jordan was merciless, burning through layers of desert haze as the transport jet came to a stop on the edge of a remote airstrip. The C-17's ramp hissed open with hydraulic force, releasing a blast of heat that rolled into the belly of the aircraft like a tidal wave. Bella was the first to feel it. But she didn't flinch. She stepped out into the brightness, boots hitting the tarmac with quiet finality. The soldiers behind her followed, blinking under the unforgiving glare. Bella didn't turn to look. She didn't need to. A jeep waited at the edge of the strip. The driver, a young corporal, jumped out and snapped a salute. "Sergeant Carrington, command's expecting you." Bella returned the salute with a nod. "Lead the way." The ride across the base was short but rough. The desert winds had swept sand across the roadways, and the jeep bucked and rattled like an old warhorse. Jordan's southern terrain rolled out in tan ridges and bone-dry valleys. This wasn't a tourist country, not this far out. This was a place for preparation, for drills, for the final days before deployment. They reached the outer wall of a forward training installation marked only by stenciled black numbers, FOB 23. Inside, a mixed unit was assembling, men and women in various branches of service, most of them young, some barely shaving. A few were returning vets, others had that look Bella knew too well. Cocky, hungry, but untested. A tall captain in mirrored sunglasses approached as Bella stepped out of the jeep. "Sergeant Carrington, I'm Captain Elias Monroe. Welcome back to the sandbox." Bella looked him over. Too clean, the voices too smooth. She gave a curt nod. "Appreciate it. I've read your file. Command wants you working with Tier 1 candidates. Mental toughness drills, scenario stress tests. We've got some promising kids, but they've never had to earn every breath in a hot zone." "I'm not here to coddle them," Bella said. Monroe smiled. "Good, because the last trainer we had tried that. He left 3 days later, voluntarily." He led her toward the shaded briefing tent, where folding chairs were scattered beneath dusty canvas and a battered whiteboard stood propped against a crate of bottled water. Monroe clapped once to get attention. "All right, Boots, eyes up. We've got a new team lead joining us today. You may have seen the photo floating around. Yeah, that photo. This is Sergeant First Class Bella Carrington." Some heads turned, a few widened, others didn't react at all. Monroe stepped aside. Bella moved to the front. No podium, no pageantry. She just looked at them. "You don't know me," she said. "And you don't need to. But if you're sitting here thinking this program is another checkbox in your career ladder, let me save you the trouble. You won't make it." A murmur. One soldier shifted in their seat. "I've seen real fear. I've seen men with 3 combat tours freeze up because the ground shook differently under their boots. I've seen leaders forget their own names when the first round cracked." She let the silence settle. "You're not here to impress me or each other. You're here to learn how to survive. I'm not your enemy, but I will break you if I have to, because better I do it here than you fold out there." A female Marine in the front row raised a hand. "Ma'am, what's your background?" Bella glanced at her. "Fallujah, 2004. I stayed behind. My unit got out. I didn't, at least not the same." That shut the questions down. Monroe looked mildly impressed. "All right then, you heard her. Gear up. First stress drill in 20 minutes. The group scattered." Bella stood her ground. By the end of the hour, the desert heat had intensified. Bella watched as the candidates were led into a simulation village. Rows of concrete huts, gutted cars and narrow alleyways designed to replicate urban combat zones. Explosive charges were hidden. Flashbangs were armed. A team of instructors with remote triggers waited on standby. Bella joined them at the edge of the control tent. One of the instructors, an older airborne NCO, nodded to her. "Word travels fast," he said. "You really the one Rhodes saluted in Ramstein?" Bella shrugged. "Depends who's asking." He grinned. "I'm Jackson. Been breaking these kids in for 6 months. Glad to have backup." The drills began. One by one, teams moved through the mock village, radios crackling, simulated fire popping from hidden speakers. Some froze, some shouted over each other. One recruit nearly tripped over a blank charge. Bella watched it all without comment, until one of the louder candidates, a wiry army corporal named Kincaid, tried to bulldoze his way through an alley without checking corners. The flashbang went off 2 feet from his leg. He yelped and dropped his rifle. Later, as the team regrouped, Bella called him out. "You think yelling louder makes you a leader?" Kincaid stammered. "No, ma'am. You nearly got your team ghosted because you forgot Rule 1. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. You rush like that again, you're out." He nodded, chastened. Bella walked past him. The other recruits took notice. And the desert, for once, went quiet. The next morning, the desert gave no mercy. The sun rose early, and by 0700, the heat had already crept into every seam of fabric and under every helmet strap. Bella stood at the edge of the training ground, arms crossed, watching the unit drag their feet into formation like sleep-deprived teenagers on a schoolyard. Captain Monroe wasn't there yet, which was just as well. Bella stepped forward. "Line up!" A full kit. This isn't a brunch line. There was grumbling. She heard it. She ignored it. A few late stragglers jogged in, including Corporal Kincaid, who looked like he hadn't slept. He kept his head down. Bella walked down the line slowly. "Today isn't about weapons," she said. "Today is about what happens when your body says no, and your mind has to decide if that matters." They stared at her, confused. A few exchanged glances. She pointed toward the far hill, a rocky slope stretching up toward a communications tower, steep and exposed. "You're going up." "You're going up with 40-pound rucks, 1 canteen, no shade, and a 5-minute head start before my instructors release the drones. If they tag your vest sensors with a simulated strike, you're dead." Someone muttered, "She's joking." Bella's gaze cut across the group like a scalpel. "Go, now." They moved. It wasn't a clean start. A few stumbled. Some tried to take shortcuts around the terrain but were called out. The instructors followed behind with tablet screens tracking movement and impact zones. From her post at the base of the hill, Bella watched them disappear over the crest. Jackson stepped up beside her. "Bit harsh for day 2. Bella didn't respond. "You want them to hate you?" he asked. She turned slightly. "I want them to live." Upon the hill, the sun showed no mercy. The team slowed quickly. Kincaid led a small cluster, but his breathing was ragged. The youngest Marine, Phillips, fell behind early, wheezing. Others tried to help, only to get pinged by the drone sensors. At the summit, one candidate collapsed. Bella was already halfway up. She reached the soldier, a female Air Force specialist named Donnelly, just as the medic arrived. "Heat stress," he reported. "She didn't hydrate." Bella crouched beside her. "Why didn't you say something?" Donnelly looked dazed. "Didn't want to be the weak link." Bella's voice was firm. "You don't speak up, you become the dead link." She looked up at the rest of the unit. "Break's over. Drag her gear down. Move." They descended in silence, dusty and bruised. Once at the base, Bella gathered them in the shade. "You don't get stronger from comfort," she said. "You get stronger from choice, from choosing to keep moving when it's hell out here, from choosing not to let the team carry your weight." Kincaid raised his hand. "Speak," Bella said. He hesitated. "Why are you so hard on us?" She looked at him for a long moment. "Because once I trained with someone who laughed off the hard days, who rolled his eyes at drills. He died 32 seconds after stepping into real fire. No one spoke after that. Later that day, Monroe returned and called Bella into the ops tent. Inside, air conditioning hummed. A NDA laptop sat open beside a pot of coffee that had long gone cold. "Command's impressed," Monroe said. "Said your name came up in the CENTCOM readiness briefing this morning." Bella arched an eyebrow. "Did they use it as a warning or a recommendation?" Monroe chuckled. "A bit of both." He leaned against the table. "You've got a lot of eyes on you now. Some are happy to see you back. Others, not so much. I'm not here to win votes. Still," he added, "just keep in mind, some of these brass think the old guard should stay retired. You make them look soft." Bella didn't reply. She just stared out through the flap of the tent at the exhausted team regrouping under the sun. "They've got 5 days left with me," she said. "I'm not slowing down." That evening, as the desert cooled and shadows stretched across the sand, Bella sat alone near the barracks, cleaning a training rifle in silence. The recruits passed her in small groups, some quiet, others nodding respectfully. Corporal Kincaid approached last. He didn't speak at first, just stood there awkwardly, rifle slung over his back. "Then, I was an idiot. Back at the village, I thought I had to prove something." Bella looked up. "And now? I just want to get better." She nodded once. "Then don't try to lead. Learn to follow well first. The rest will come." He sat beside her. For a while neither of them spoke. The desert didn't either, it just listened. The following morning Bella was already at the training site before first light. The moon still hung over the ridge, casting a pale glow across the compacted sand and scattered concrete obstacles. She had her hands in her pockets, her gaze fixed on the horizon. This was the halfway point, the time when most recruits either snapped or sharpened. The cadence of boots approached from behind. She didn't have to turn. "Morning, Sergeant," Jackson said, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "You don't ever rest, do you?" Bella finally spoke. "Not when they still breathe like civilians." Jackson chuckled, then turned serious. "Command sent over a package last night, said to brief you personally. Intel packet." Bella frowned. "Intel?" He handed her a manila folder, sealed and marked confidential. Back in the command tent, she opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet, a name, a photo, coordinates, a note beneath, pre-deployment asset evaluation. "You'll observe, no intervention unless protocol breached." Bella stared at the image. It was Kincaid. Jackson stood outside when she returned. "Something wrong?" Bella handed the file back, her jaw tight. "Tell Monroe if they want me babysitting ghosts, they can send someone else." "They trust your judgment," Jackson said. "Or they wouldn't have asked." Bella didn't answer. 2 hours later, the unit gathered at the shooting range. Today was live fire. The mood was quiet, focused. No one joked. Even Kincaid moved with intent. Bella walked the line, eyes sharp. "Your weapon is your mind," she said, her voice clear. "It fires where you focus, misses when you doubt. Kill hesitation before it kills you." One by one they took their shots. Phillips flinched in the third round. "Stop," Bella said, hands off the rifle. The young Marine stepped back. His eyes showed panic. She walked over. "What did you see?" He hesitated. "My brother, Afghanistan. He didn't come back." Bella didn't speak immediately. Then, gently, "Did he freeze?" Phillips shook his head. "No, he ran in." "Then honor that," she said, "by learning when to stay still. Fear isn't cowardice, it's intel." He nodded, breathing steadier. The next round went smoother. Bella watched Kincaid closely. His grouping was tight, his reload is clean, but it was his eyes she measured, no longer defiant, but disciplined. After the exercise, Monroe called Bella into a makeshift office in the far corner of the barracks. "We've got a visitor tomorrow," he said, tone dry. "Who?" "General Rhodes. Apparently your reunion made waves." Bella raised an eyebrow. "Is this a parade?" "No, it's an inspection. But if I were you, I'd prep for optics. Optics don't sweat." Monroe grinned. "No, but command sure does when cameras roll." That night, Bella couldn't sleep. She sat under the stars near the observation tower, old coffee cooling in her canteen cup. Jackson found her there. "Rhodes showing up makes the whole camp jumpy," he said. Bella sipped the bitter liquid. "They want a story, not results. Maybe. But stories shift cultures." Bella looked up. "You believe that?" "I believe the right one told at the right time can stop the wrong one from being repeated." The next morning, everything was spotless. Barracks swept, uniforms crisp, flags hanging high. The team stood in formation, sweat already rolling despite the early hour. A pair of black SUVs rolled in, dust trailing behind them. Rhodes stepped out of the second one. He wore desert camo, 4 stars glinting on his chest plate. His expression was unreadable. Monroe greeted him. First they exchanged tight handshakes. Rhodes said little. Then he walked toward Bella. "Sergeant Carrington, General." He looked over the assembled candidates. "They're still standing. That's something." "They're learning," Bella replied, "and remembering faster than most." Rhodes nodded slowly. "I came to observe your methods firsthand." "You're late." Drill started at dawn. Rhodes smiled faintly. "Then let's catch up." The drill Bella prepared wasn't for show. It was the harshest yet. She sent the team into a mock hostage scenario inside a blackout maze. They were disoriented by strobe lights, loud sirens, and random smoke bursts. The environment simulated chaos, and their job was to rescue, extract, and exfil under pressure. Rhodes stood beside her outside the entrance. He said nothing until 10 minutes passed. "These conditions," he said, "they're brutal. They're real." Another minute passed. "Candidate 2 just panicked," Bella noted. "Listen." A voice inside screamed, "Where the hell are we?" Then silence. Another instructor marked it on the tablet. Rhodes watched her. "You see everything, don't you?" "I look for what matters." When the team emerged, sweating, coughing, 2 members limping, Bella didn't say a word. She only raised one hand. "To Kincaid," she called. "Why didn't you extract Donnelly?" He looked surprised. "I thought she was already out." "She wasn't. You assumed. In war, that's a body." Rhodes turned to Monroe. "She doesn't hold back," Monroe replied. "That's why they're still breathing." After the debrief, Rhodes lingered. When Bella approached, he said quietly, "I had doubts about bringing you back, but what I saw today proved me wrong." Bella met his eyes. "Good, because I'm just getting started." Rhodes nodded, then turned to leave, but not before glancing back once, toward the team still recovering in the dust, toward the store she had become, and the calm she was teaching them to find within it. That night, after the dust had settled and the sun melted into the dunes, Bella walked alone along the outer perimeter of Fob 23. The base lights cast long shadows behind her, stretching like arms across the sand. She needed the quiet. After Rhodes's visit, the camp was abuzz, half admiration, half gossip. That was always the cost of recognition. She wasn't looking for recognition, she was looking for readiness. When she returned to the instructor's quarters, Jackson was waiting by the steps, arms crossed and wearing a look that wasn't quite a smirk, but close. Rhodes left a message, he said, and I quote, "She's still more Marine than most of the new batch combined." Bella exhaled through her nose. "I'm not here to be flattered. He also said CENTCOM approved you for extended deployment if you accept it." Bella looked at him. "They want me to stay on?" Jackson nodded. "Not just here. To help design the new Tier 1 prep protocols. You'd be in charge." She said nothing for a long moment. "Then, we'll see how this team finishes. I'm not building anything on half-earned respect." The next day brought wind, harsh desert gusts that carried sand through cracks in walls and stung the eyes even under goggles. But Bella didn't postpone the training. If anything, she intensified it. The team was sent into movement drills under degraded visibility, smoke grenades, wind tunnels, deafening simulated fire, all of it designed to rattle their instincts. Kincaid led his unit through the gauntlet with renewed discipline. He no longer barked orders. He issued them clearly, eyes sharp, scanning corners. He didn't step over anyone. He pulled 2 members out of simulated fire zones. When Bella marked the end of the drill, Kincaid was the last to exit, dragging a teammate who had stumbled. Bella waited. "Why didn't you leave her behind?" she asked. Kincaid, panting hard, shook his head. "Because that's how you die in pieces." She nodded once. Later, inside the debrief tent, Bella stood before the group. "You've come further in 5 days than most do in 5 weeks, she said. "But that means nothing if you forget it when the dust kicks up again. Ego doesn't survive the first bullet. Arrogance doesn't get you home." She paused. "If you want to live long enough to be irrelevant like me, then remember this. Calm is a weapon. Carry it everywhere." That night, Bella sat alone again, this time not by habit, but by choice. She was rereading her old journal, the one she'd written in during recovery after Fallujah. Half the pages were stained, water-warped. One of them had a name underlined 3 times, Simmons. She traced the ink with her thumb. She hadn't spoken that name in years. A sudden knock at her door. She opened it to find Monroe holding a tablet. His expression was stiff. "Bad news?" she asked. He handed her the screen. It was a personnel report. A name was highlighted. Simmons, Lieutenant Aaron D. Status. Missing in action. Presumed deceased. Bella stared. "This is old. Look at the update," she scrolled. "New entry, location pinged, Syrian border. Unconfirmed source, possible POW." Her throat tightened. Monroe said quietly, "CENTCOM flagged it as low priority. They think it's misinformation, but I thought you should see it." Bella set the tablet down slowly. Her voice, when it came, was measured. "He was my spotter. I thought he bled out 2 feet from me." Monroe nodded. "If it's real, you'll want to act fast. I can't authorize anything, but Jackson has contacts." Bella didn't sleep that night. She stared at the coordinates. At sunrise, she met Jackson at the motor pool. "You ever want to break about 12 regulations?" she asked. Jackson raised an eyebrow. "You finally gonna steal that gunship you've been eyeing?" She handed him the tablet. His face hardened. "I can call in a favor," he said, "but we've got one shot. If this is real, we go off-grid. No backup. No recovery if it goes sideways." Bella zipped up her jacket. Wasn't expecting backup anyway. He hesitated. "You sure?" She met his eyes. "He saved my life. I owe him mine." They left that evening under the cover of a scheduled recon op. Bella didn't tell Monroe, didn't tell the team, just left a note, training resumes in 48 hours, stay sharp, stay standing. Then she disappeared into the desert once more. The desert was a different kind of quiet at night. Not the peaceful hush of a resting world, but a charged stillness, a breath held in the dark, waiting to explode. Bella knew this silence. She had lived in it once, bled in it. Now she was slipping back into its arms. The truck Jackson secured was old but reliable, camo-painted and stripped of any identifying marks. They drove with no lights, following a route only a few insiders knew, cutting through dry wadis and ridge-shadowed flats, guided by moonlight and a red-dotted GPS. Neither of them spoke much. Bella studied the terrain. Jackson kept his hand near the wheel and his other on the concealed sidearm by his thigh. "How reliable is your contact?" Bella asked finally. "Reliable enough to get a shot if we don't follow protocol. He says Simmons was seen 2 nights ago, held by a militia cell near Al-Hari, close to the border. They move prisoners often. If we don't get there by tomorrow night, he's ghosted again." Bella nodded, silent. Simmons. She hadn't said his name aloud in 15 years. She still heard his voice in the ringing silence after a mortar strike. Still saw his hand pressed to his stomach, eyes locked on hers. "I got you," he had said, but he never came back. By dawn, they reached an abandoned relay station nestled behind a bluff. Jackson's contact, a wiry man in his 50s named Rafik, waited by a rusted satellite dish. He spoke with urgency, gesturing toward a map he had laid on the hood of a pickup. "The building is here, former police post. Now it's a makeshift prison. No more than 6 guards, light weapons, no external patrols. They're moving out at dusk." Bella studied the layout. "Prisoners?" Rafik hesitated. 2. 1 American, 1 Syrian defector. "I do not know which is your friend's." She tapped the corner of the building's image. "Entry point? Rear kitchen window. Unused. Bars were cut during an old raid. You can slip in." Jackson looked at her. "Are we doing this silently?" Bella's voice was steel. "No casualties unless fired upon. This is extraction, not revenge." That evening, as twilight bled across the dunes, they crept into position. The air buzzed with distant static, radios from inside, wind scratching across rubble. Bella crouched behind a collapsed wall and pulled her scarf tight. Through her NVGs, she saw flickers of movement, shadows, guards pacing lazily, unaware. She moved like a ghost, slipped through the broken window, landed in silence. Jackson followed seconds later. Inside, the building smelled of mildew and oil. A narrow hallway stretched ahead, a closed door, muffled voices. She signaled. They moved. 1 guard stood in a side room, half dozing with a cigarette. Bella dropped him in 2 moves. Disarm, choke, silent collapse. Jackson dragged the body out of sight. They reached the cell door, a rusted padlock. Bella reached for her bolt cutter. A cough from inside. Then a voice, rough, American, hoarse. "If you're here to kill me, get on with it." She paused. "Aaron?" Silence. Then slowly, "Bella?" She cut the lock. Inside, Simmons sat hunched, beard overgrown, face thin but alert. His eyes found hers, and for the first time in over a decade, both of them saw something neither thought they would again. Recognition. And unfinished survival. Jackson checked the corridor. "We're clear for now, but not for long." Bella helped Simmons up. He winced but stood. "Can you move?" "Not fast, but I won't slow you down." They exited the cell just as a shout rang out near the front. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness. "Go!" Bella hissed. They moved fast, darting through the ruined kitchen, over broken tiles and ash. Behind them, boots pounded, voices rose. Gunfire cracked. Jackson returned 2 suppressive bursts and ducked. Bella shielded Simmons with her body as they scrambled through the gap in the outer wall. Rafik's truck waited with the engine running. They dove in. The vehicle peeled out, bullets striking behind them in the dust. 1 ricocheted off the tailgate. Simmons grunted, hit in the arm. Bella applied pressure instantly. "You're not dying now," she growled. He laughed weakly. "You always were bossy." They reached a safe zone by sunrise, an Allied forward camp just shy of the Jordanian border. Medical staff swarmed Simmons. Bella stood off to the side, arms folded, expression unreadable. Jackson came up beside her. "They'll debrief us, might slap our wrists, might give you another medal." She didn't answer. She watched as Simmons, half-conscious, looked for her. Their eyes met. He mouthed one word, "Thanks." She gave the smallest of nods, then walked away into the light of the rising sun, not for praise, not for redemption, but because unfinished business had no expiration date. And Bella Carrington wasn't done yet. Bella returned to Fob 23 with sand still clinging to her boots and Simmons's blood faintly marking her sleeve. No one asked where she had been. No one had to. The recruits noticed the difference immediately, the slight rawness in her walk, the deeper stillness in her stare. She arrived just before dawn, slipping back into routine like she had never left. The sun hadn't risen yet, but her team was already assembling for another brutal day. They saw her silhouette against the floodlights and straightened unconsciously. Captain Monroe met her at the perimeter. His expression was unreadable. "We got a message from the border camp," he said. "Simmons is stable. Medics say he should make a full recovery. CENTCOM's not thrilled about how it happened, but they're not pressing charges." Bella nodded once. "Understood." He held her gaze. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you would have done the right thing, and the right thing would have been too late." Monroe looked at her for a long moment before nodding. "Welcome back, Sergeant." The morning drill was already underway when Bella stepped onto the course. The trainees, now harder, leaner, more alert, moved in rhythm across the obstacle line. Kincaid spotted her first and said nothing, but the slight nod he gave her carried more weight than words. Bella stood silently at the edge of the field until the final rotation finished. The squad gathered, catching their breath. She spoke clearly. "You trained without me. You pushed yourselves. That matters. But the real test starts now." She pointed to the observation tower. A new set of flags had been mounted, red, green, and black. Each color represents a scenario. You'll be assigned to random teams and given real-time mission objectives. No instructors, no hints, only consequence. You complete your mission, you rotate up. You fail, you redo it under fire. Kincaid raised his hand. "Under fire?" She nodded. "Non-lethal munitions, paint rounds, but you'll feel it." The group exchanged glances. No one objected. The exercises began at noon and stretched into the evening. Bella watched from the tower, flanked by two new instructors assigned to monitor. She gave minimal input, letting the teams adapt, struggle, and overcome. Kincaid's team executed their red flag mission, a simulated hostage rescue, in near textbook form, except for one critical delay in their extraction. Bella noted it. During the debrief, she addressed it. "Who assumed the evac route was clear?" Kincaid spoke up. "I did. I relied on yesterday's recon." Bella met his eyes. "Yesterday gets you killed. Today keeps you alive." He nodded, accepting it. "No excuses." Another team botched their black flag mission, a downed drone recovery, by splitting up too soon. Bella didn't raise her voice. She let silence do its work. "You broke the cardinal rule," she finally said. "No one gets lost alone. Not in the desert. Not in war. Not in life." That night, Bella walked the barracks, checking on gear, glancing over sleeping forms. She paused outside one bunk. Phillips's. The young Marine had struggled at first, but now held his own. A photo was tucked into the frame of his cot. A man in uniform smiling, his brother. Bella exhaled softly. At the far end of the barracks, Kincaid sat cleaning his rifle under a dim light. He looked up. "You really found him?" Bella nodded. "Yeah. Is he okay?" "He will be." Kincaid hesitated. "What was he like before?" She sat across from him. "Louder than me. Smarter too, but reckless. We both were. That's why we got paired. We balanced each other." He leaned forward. Did it change you, saving him now? Bella thought for a moment. No, it reminded me why I stayed. He didn't ask what she meant. He already understood. The final day of training dawned with thick clouds crawling over the horizon, a rare sign of possible rain in the Jordanian desert. The heat lingered, but the sky bore weight. Fob 23 stirred with purpose. This wasn't just a day to complete drills, it was graduation day. But not the kind with speeches and applause. Bella stood near the obstacle course as the recruits assembled one last time. Their uniforms were dusty, their boots scuffed, but their eyes sharp, hardened, ready. Captain Monroe approached quietly, his clipboard tucked under one arm. "You sure you want to run them today?" he asked. "They've passed every metric. They've earned the badge." Bella didn't look at him. "Then they'll prove it one more time." He exhaled, understanding. "All right, you're the boss." She turned to the squad. "Today's not a drill," she said. "Today is a simulation. Real tactics, real pressure, unknown variables. You've trained for every scenario. Now we combine them. 1 4-hour op, urban sweep followed by perimeter defense, followed by personnel extraction. You will rotate leadership. No one leads twice. If you fail any segment, the whole team resets. If one of you goes down, it's over." Kincaid raised his hand. "Is this for show?" Bella's gaze was ice. "Nothing about what we do is for show." The simulation began at 0700. Bella, Monroe, and Jackson observed from the command tower, tracking unit movement via helmet cams and drone feeds. The trainees moved through an abandoned mock village constructed of blast walls, overturned cars, and sand-colored shipping containers. The first phase was smooth, controlled entry, synchronized sweeps, and excellent use of hand signals. Kincaid led with calm authority, only speaking when necessary. Phillips watched their six with near-paranoid diligence. Then came the twist. Bella had planted a civilian decoy in the second building, a local interpreter, a real one, paid to scream and resist. It rattled them. One recruit hesitated, another shouted over the noise. Kincaid stepped in, de-escalated, and secured the scene without a shot fired. Bella nodded to herself. He's learning. Next came the defense drill. The squad had 5 minutes to fortify a checkpoint against simulated insurgents. Paintball turrets were hidden in crates and launched randomized attacks. Jackson activated them manually from the tower. The team set up cover, identified blind spots, and assigned arcs of fire. The first 2 waves came fast and loud. Phillips took a round to the vest. He dropped, hands raised. "Down!" he shouted, honoring the rules. Kincaid dragged him behind cover before returning to the line. "Not bad," Monroe muttered. "She's turning them into the kind of soldiers who lived to train others." The final challenge was the extraction. Donnelly took point. The route was compromised, unexpected drone flyovers and a planted IED that required quick thinking to circumvent. They faltered. A wrong turn cost them 2 simulated injuries. The pressure mounted. Kincaid tapped out as leader, passing command to another recruit, as per protocol. That decision, relinquishing control, may have saved them. When the timer ended, the team crossed the final marker, battered but intact. The field was silent. Bella stood on the tower. She walked toward them, the sand crunching beneath her boots. When she reached the line, she looked at each face, dirt-smeared, sweat-streaked, alert, alive. "You passed," she said simply. Some released breath. Others blinked in disbelief. One fist pump. No cheers, just quiet pride. Monroe joined her. CENTCOM will want to interview at least 3 of them. Fast-track potential. Bella nodded. "Start with Kincaid?" As the squad headed for the mess tent, Bella pulled Kincaid aside. "You hesitated when you passed off command," she said. He looked down. "I thought I was failing them." "You weren't," she said. "You were proving you understand leadership isn't about control. It's about trust. That's what gets people home." He met her eyes. "Is that how you saved Simmons?" She paused. That's how I didn't lose him a second time." He nodded, then quietly, "Thank you for not giving up on us." Bella gave him a look, sharp but softened by something earned. "Make sure you don't give up on anyone else." That night, the squad gathered near the watchtower for their own quiet celebration. No ceremony, just rations, laughter, and stories passed around in the glow of portable lanterns. Bella stood at a distance for a while, watching. Monroe eventually approached, 2 mugs in hand. He offered her one. "You did good, Sergeant." She took the mug. "They did better." He studied her. "So, are you staying?" She didn't answer at first. Then, "They need leaders who've seen the whole picture. But I'm not a recruiter. I'm a builder. If CENTCOM wants a new foundation, I'll help pour it, but only if they let me do it right." He nodded slowly. "And if they don't?" She looked back at the group, at Phillips leaning on Donnelly's shoulder, at Kincaid laughing, at others relaxed for the first time in days. "Then I'll find the ones worth saving, and train them anyway." A week after graduation, the desert heat broke. A rare storm swept across the Jordanian plateau, brief but fierce, washing the dust from every stone and leaving behind a strange hush. Fob 23, for the first time in weeks, felt almost clean. Bella sat alone in the command tent, the flap open, the wind stirring maps and files that littered the table. Her mug of black coffee had long since gone cold. In front of her lay a thin dossier, stamped and sealed, her official reassignment orders. She'd been offered the position, lead instructor, Tier 1 Development Command, a permanent posting, resources, full autonomy, everything she'd fought for. She hadn't signed it yet. Monroe entered quietly. "You're going to let the ink dry on that without a signature?" Bella didn't look up. "I've been chasing ghosts for a long time. This is the first time they stopped running." He leaned against the desk. "So now what?" "I'm thinking." Across the base, Kincaid was saying his goodbyes. He'd been selected for CENTCOM's advanced tactical program, fast-tracked, just like Monroe predicted. The rest of the team had scattered, some to new deployments, others to advanced training, all carrying more weight in their steps than when they arrived. Phillips had left a note for Bella before departing. "Thanks for teaching me how to stand still when it matters most." She kept it in her pocket. Later that afternoon, Bella took a walk around the base. The rain had settled the dust into a hardened crust beneath her boots. The mock village, once chaotic and scorched with training scars, now looked like a memory, familiar and quiet. She stopped near the watchtower. It was there she found Jackson, sitting on a crate, polishing his sidearm with a rag that looked older than half the soldiers they'd trained. He looked up. "You heading out?" "Maybe. You take the job?" "Still deciding." He smirked. "They're not used to being left on red." She gave a dry chuckle. "They'll live." He grew serious. "You made a difference here. Whatever you decide, just know that." She nodded. "I didn't come to be remembered, just remind them to remember themselves." That night, Bella sat in her bunk staring at the unsigned orders again. The weight of command wasn't unfamiliar, but this time it came with power, real power, the ability to change systems, not just squads, but systems were slow. Politics was slower. Bella had always moved at her own pace, fast, direct, purposeful. She reached for a pen, then stopped. Instead, she pulled out a different sheet of paper, a blank one. She began writing names. Not of fallen comrades, not this time. These were the names of those still in the system, soldiers she had met in passing. Recruits were overlooked because they didn't fit the mold. Veterans are too young to retire, too old to be trendy. Warriors in waiting. A different kind of unit, her own. In the morning, she handed Monroe the unsigned orders. "Tell them thanks, but no." He blinked. "You're declining? You serious?" "I'm serious." He stared at her. "What are you going to do?" She smiled faintly. "Start something that doesn't need permission." A month later, in an old decommissioned outpost in southern Italy, a new unit formed under no official flag. Recruits arrived quietly, names whispered through back channels, files passed hand to hand. They called it the Forge. No ranks, no uniforms, just trial by truth. And at the center stood Bella Carrington, not forgotten, not finished, just finally in command of her own mission. The Forge didn't appear on any official registry. There were no patches, no press releases, no welcome briefings. The only way in was through reputation, yours or someone who vouched for you. It existed in whispers and handshakes, in classified memos that conveniently disappeared. And yet, word spread. 2 months after Bella turned down the CENTCOM promotion, her new outpost in southern Italy, an abandoned NATO relay station, was humming with life. It had been stripped of insignia and ceremony. What remained was raw potential. She spent the first week alone, cleaning, wiring and reinforcing walls. Jackson arrived next, no questions asked, with 2 duffels and a tired smirk. Then came the others, a medic who had been discharged for speaking too loudly about incompetence, a drone tech who built battlefield solutions faster than command could authorize them, a former Afghan interpreter who'd been denied asylum but never stopped fighting. They didn't ask about titles, they asked about grit. By the end of month 3, they had 8 recruits. Bella ran the first training cycle herself. There were no wake-up calls, just consequences, no rank pulling, just accountability. If you failed, you didn't get yelled at. You got asked if you wanted to keep trying. Most stayed. A few didn't. She didn't chase them. The Forge wasn't for everyone. One of the earliest standouts was a woman named Samira Dashti, a former logistics officer who'd been sidelined after questioning deployment priorities. Samira wasn't loud, but she was sharp and utterly unshakable under pressure. Bella tested her personally, dropped her in the woods alone for 36 hours with only a compass and a riddle. Samira came back early with the answer. 3 water canisters she found cached and a field map she'd redrawn from memory. "You're not testing survival," she told Bella. "You're testing clarity. Focus under silence." Bella nodded. "You pass." Occasionally, someone from the old world reached out. Monroe sent encrypted messages asking for advice. Simmons, now recovering, emailed updates from Germany, where he was helping train NATO medics. Kincaid, freshly embedded in a recon unit, mailed a photograph, his squad standing in front of a mud brick school in Africa, grins and rifles slung low. On the back, he'd written, "We remember everything you taught us, even the hard parts." Bella pinned the photo near the mess hall. Some nights the recruits would stop and study it. They never asked why it mattered. They understood. Trouble came in the 4th month. A drone strike gone wrong in northern Syria was quietly buried by the upper brass. One of the Forge's former trainees, assigned nearby, sent word civilians were hit. Intel was flawed. The unit that called in the strike was now sitting on sealed lips and silent guilt. Bella called a meeting. "We don't fix headlines," she told them. "We fix people." Samira raised a hand. "Can we reach them? Maybe." "But not as the Forge," Jackson grinned. "We still have friends in places that don't ask questions." Within 48 hours, 2 medics and a tech analyst from the Forge embedded with a humanitarian team near the strike zone. Officially, they were unaffiliated supporters. Unofficially, they helped stabilize 5 families, collected eyewitness data, and smuggled out a suppressed incident report. Bella didn't publish it. She sent it directly to Rhodes. Attached was a note, "Don't let them carry this alone." That night, standing under the open stars, Jackson found her near the old comms tower. "You're building something dangerous," he said. "I know, but good." She looked at him. Dangerous and good usually ride in the same truck. He nodded. "And where are we headed?" Bella looked out over the horizon where the wind stirred the flags that didn't fly, wherever they forgot to care. The Forge had grown quietly but relentlessly over the months since its inception. What began as a handful of disillusioned warriors had swelled into a network of operatives, trainers, and strategists scattered across continents. A shadow force built on grit, trust, and necessity. Bella Carrington's name was no longer whispered just in the barracks or back channels. It was a legend among those who understood that true change often came from outside the official lines. On a cool evening beneath the dim glow of low-hanging industrial lights, Bella sat at the head of the long, scarred table in the main hall of the Forge's base, a repurposed NATO relay station on the rugged coast of southern Italy. Around her were the core members, faces illuminated by the soft blue light of screens and the flicker of lanterns. These were warriors shaped by trials, bound not by rank but by respect and shared purpose. Jackson leaned back in his chair, arms crossed over a worn tactical jacket. "You ever regret walking away from the brass, Bella?" His voice was low, a rare softness in a man hardened by war. She looked up, eyes sharp as ever, a faint trace of the old fire in them. "Every day. But I never regretted walking toward what matters." Samira Dashti, now a key strategist and Bella's right hand, spoke up. "We're making a difference. That's why they fear us." Bella nodded slowly. "They fear what they can't control." The room grew quiet save for the gentle hum of servers, the rhythmic tapping of keys as plans and intel streamed into the encrypted networks they'd built. Maps and operational grids covered whiteboards, a web of lines and codes that spoke to missions in the forgotten corners of the world. Places where bureaucracy never reached, but where lives depended on quiet, effective action. Suddenly, a secure comm beeped sharply. Jackson answered without hesitation, his face tensed as he listened. When he finally nodded, he looked toward Bella. "That was Monroe. CENTCOM wants a sit-down, not with us, with you." Bella's brow furrowed. "After everything?" Jackson shrugged. "Command's complicated, but this isn't a request." The meeting was set at a neutral NATO base in Spain. Bella arrived alone, carrying nothing but her presence and the weight of her decisions. Inside the austere conference room, she faced a panel of generals and officials. They questioned her, tested her, and tried to bind her with protocol and bureaucracy. But Bella was unflappable. She laid out the Forge's successes, the lives saved, the intel gathered, the soldiers trained. She called out the failures of traditional command, the red tape, the politics, the blind spots. The generals exchanged looks. Some admired her resolve, others bristled at the challenge to their authority. One silver-haired general leaned forward, his voice cold. "You operate in the shadows. That's a liability." Bella met his gaze steadily. "Shadows are where the overlooked thrive. You call it liability, I call it necessity." The meeting ended without a clear resolution, but the message was unmistakable. The Forge was too effective to ignore and too unpredictable to control. Back at the Forge, Bella gathered her leaders. "We're at a crossroads," she said. "Either we integrate into their system, or we become the ghosts they fear." Jackson smirked. "I vote ghosts," Samira added with a quiet smile, "better to be feared than forgotten." Bella nodded, her eyes sweeping the room. "Then ghosts it is. No flags would be flown. No public announcements were made. Only purpose." For Bella Carrington and the Forge, the fight was far from over. It was just beginning. The dawn broke slow and somber over the rugged hills of southern Italy, casting long, weary shadows across the remnants of what once was a bustling NATO relay station. Bella Carrington stood at the edge of the compound, her gaze steady on the horizon, where the sun was only just beginning to ignite the sky in a bruised palette of oranges and purples. Around her, the Forge, her unconventional family, stirred awake, each member moving with quiet purpose beneath the pale light. Unlike any unit Bella had ever known, the Forge thrived on the margins. They were ghosts in the eyes of the world, warriors forged not by medals or glory, but by raw survival, unyielding loyalty, and the harsh lessons of forgotten battlefields. Their weapons were sharpened minds and hardened hearts. Their battlefield was wherever justice had been abandoned. The morning briefing room was sparse, a simple concrete bunker repurposed into a command center with a flickering projector, faded maps pinned to cracked walls, and the faint hum of old servers providing life to the encrypted data streams. Bella's voice cut through the still air as she outlined their next mission. "We're moving into northern Syria," she said. The words weighed with a gravity that made even the seasoned operatives hush. "Intel confirms a high-value target is using a civilian compound as a base. We're going in to extract and neutralize." Her eyes locked onto Samira, who nodded in acknowledgement, already calculating logistics in her mind. "Rules of engagement are tight," Bella continued. "Minimal collateral, no unnecessary force. This isn't a firefight, it's precision." Jackson glanced at the schematics projected on the wall. "It's heavily fortified. We'll need infiltration support from the locals and drone overwatch." Bella nodded. "And no backup. This is going to be on us, in and out." Preparation consumed the next 48 hours, equipment checks, silent drills, and planning sessions that stretched into the small hours of the night. Every move was rehearsed, every contingency analyzed. Despite the pressure, an unspoken camaraderie had blossomed among the team, forged through shared hardship and the certainty of what was at stake. On the eve of deployment, Bella stood apart from the others, her mind wandering to the countless ghosts she carried with her. Simmons, Kincaid, Phillips, faces etched with memories of fire and sacrifice. She drew a deep breath, grounding herself. The night of the operation arrived like a storm. Under the cloak of darkness, the Forge approached the target compound in small, dispersed teams. The only sounds were the crunch of gravel under boots and the distant howl of the desert wind. Bella's team moved with practiced stealth, slipping past patrols and surveillance cameras with the precision of shadows. The hum of drones above provided real-time intelligence, while radios crackled softly, voices calm and measured. Inside the compound, the team found the high-value target, a ruthless warlord responsible for orchestrating attacks on civilian populations, surrounded by armed guards. Extraction was complicated by the presence of non-combatants, women and children hidden within the same walls. Bella's orders were clear: protect the innocent, take the target alive if possible. The assault was surgical. Bella led the breach, her heart pounding but her mind sharp. She neutralized the first guard with a swift, silent move, then pressed forward. The team moved in synchrony, each member a vital piece of the operation's fragile puzzle. The warlord attempted to flee, but Kincaid intercepted him, applying non-lethal force and restraining him swiftly. As the dust settled, Bella's eyes scanned the faces of the rescued civilians, frightened but unharmed. Relief washed over her, tempered by the knowledge that this victory was only a small battle in a war far from over. Exfiltration was tense. The team slipped out under the same shadows that had concealed their entry, disappearing into the night as local allies secured the area. The mission was a success, but the cost was clear. Every victory came at the price of sleepless nights and haunted memories. Back at the Forge, the team debriefed in quiet reflection. They were not heroes in the traditional sense. Their deeds were unseen by the world, their names unknown. Yet in the glow of dim lights and quiet camaraderie, they found purpose and pride. Bella looked around at her team, warriors molded by hardship, bound by loyalty. Her journey from a scarred veteran doubted at a military checkpoint to the leader of this unseen war was a testament to resilience, courage, and the unyielding spirit of those who fight for justice beyond the glare of public acclaim. As dawn broke again over the Italian hills, Bella's resolve hardened. The fight was far from over, and the Forge would burn bright in the darkness. The months that followed cemented the Forge's place as more than just a clandestine unit. It became a movement, a living, breathing testament to the power of conviction against overwhelming odds. Bella Carrington's vision had taken root in hearts and minds, inspiring a new generation of warriors who saw beyond medals and ranks, who fought for purpose, not applause. Yet the path was never easy. The world they operated in remained fraught with shadows and silence. Every mission carried risks that stretched beyond battlefield dangers, political pushback, misinformation campaigns, and the constant threat of exposure. But Bella and her team adapted. They evolved. They thrived. Sitting at the head of a meeting one late evening, Bella surveyed her core members. The room was quiet, save for the faint hum of the encrypted network and the occasional tapping of keys. Maps, photographs, and reports lay scattered across the table. Their next mission loomed, more complex, more dangerous than ever. Jackson broke the silence. Intel confirms a high-level arms shipment passing through a remote corridor. Intercepting it could cripple several warlords, but the area is heavily contested. Samira nodded. We'll need precision. No collateral, no mistakes. Bella's eyes swept over the faces before her. This is what we've trained for. The unseen war continues. But it's not just about strikes or raids. It's about the lives we protect and the future we build. Her thoughts drifted back to that first day at Ramstein, the cold stares, the doubts, the laughter, how far she had come, how far they had all gone. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the worn photo Kincaid had sent, a squad of young soldiers standing proud, smiling amidst hardship. It was a reminder that every sacrifice mattered, every lesson passed on was a seed of hope. The room seemed to breathe with renewed determination. The forge was ready. Outside, the stars shone bright over the quiet Italian hills, silent witnesses to a fight that would never be forgotten. Bella smiled softly. The fight was far from over. But for the first time, she knew they were ready. As the sun slowly sank below the rugged horizon, painting the sky with hues of amber and crimson, Bella Carrington stood silently on the watchtower of the forge's base. The desert wind swept softly around her, carrying whispers of past battles, distant memories, and the quiet promise of the fights yet to come. The weight of countless stories, some told, many untold, seemed to settle around her like a cloak. Her journey had not been easy. From the moment she first stood at Ramstein Air Base, a figure of quiet defiance facing mocking laughter and dismissive sneers, to rising as the unyielding leader of a shadow force fighting for those forgotten, Bella had been shaped by every scar she bore, seen and unseen. Each mark was a story, a testament to survival, sacrifice, and a relentless refusal to surrender to doubt or injustice. The Forge was no ordinary unit. It was a family of warriors forged in fire, bound not by rank or medal, but by shared hardship, trust, and an unbreakable resolve to protect those left behind. Here, in this hidden corner of the world, Bella had found purpose beyond the bureaucracy and politics that so often stifle true progress. Together, they had taken on impossible missions, saved lives in the shadows, and rewritten what it meant to serve. She thought of the faces, Simmons, whose name she hadn't spoken aloud in years, but whose memory had never left her, Kincaid, the once cocky recruit turned steadfast leader, Phillips, the young Marine who learned that courage meant more than just charging forward. These faces were etched deeply in her heart, reminders that the fight was never just hers alone. Honor, Bella realized, was not something granted by ribbons or applause. It was earned in the moments when no one was watching, in the choice to stand firm, to protect, to lead with both strength and compassion. Her scars spoke loudly, but it was her actions and her commitment to others that truly defined her legacy. To every soldier, every fighter who carries unseen burdens, Bella's story was a beacon of hope, proof that resilience, courage, and an unwavering sense of duty could light the darkest paths. That no matter how deep the wounds, how heavy the trials, the human spirit could rise, fight back, and inspire. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the quiet heroes walking among us, please take a moment to like this video. Your support fuels the telling of these vital stories, bringing recognition to those who so often go unnoticed. We'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? What stories have moved you or shaped your understanding of courage? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your voice builds the community that honors real sacrifice and real humanity. Remember to subscribe to the channel, your source for stories that reveal the strength, resilience, and spirit behind every scar and every sacrifice. We bring you voices that deserve to be heard and tales that inspire change. And as this video ends, don't forget to check out the other stories appearing on your screen. Each video is a testament to those who stand tall in the face of adversity, who fight silently for justice, and who remind us all what it means to be truly brave. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Stay strong, stay inspired, and never forget, every scar tells a story worth telling.